You know, every single second of every single day, there's this invisible war being fought all around us. It's a war for our data. It's this high stakes game of offense and defense, of locks and lockpicks. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on this digital conflict. We'll look at two of the most fundamental battlegrounds. First, the passwords that guard our digital front doors. And second, the hidden dangers lurking deep inside our computer's memory. All right, let's get into it.
So think about it like this. A simple padlock on a shed, right? It might keep an honest person out, but a determined thief, they're getting in, and it's not going to slow them down much. Well, in the digital world, it's the exact same principle, except the thief has super tools that can try millions, literally millions of keys per second. And that brings us right to our first line of defense, the humble password.
We all use them, right? Passwords are the front door to basically our entire digital lives. But here's the crazy part. Their biggest strength, how simple they are for us to remember, is also their absolute greatest weakness, especially when they're up against something called a dictionary attack.
See, an attacker isn't some super genius who magically guesses your dog's name is Fluffy123. No. They use a massive list, a dictionary of the most common passwords ever. We're talking millions of them, and they just run a program that tries every single one. So if your password is on that list, it is not a matter of if you'll get hacked, it's a matter of when. And the answer to when is usually in just a few seconds. So what on earth do we do about this?
Well, the solution is this really clever and I think kind of beautiful technique called salting. And what's so cool about it is that it doesn't just make the lock a little bit stronger. It makes the lock for every single person completely different. And that makes a dictionary attack pretty much useless.
Okay, so here's the secret sauce. Before a system saves your password, it adds a unique random little bit of data to it. That's the salt. Imagine a whole city where every single front door used the exact same model of lock. A thief would have a field day, right? They just need one master key. But with salting, it's like every single house in that city gets a completely unique, one-of-a-kind, custom-made lock. That thief's master key, it's totally worthless now.
And here's the best part. We can actually prove how powerful this is with a little bit of math. Now, don't worry, this formula looks way scarier than it is. It's really just showing us the attacker's new nightmare, what we call their search space, or, all the guesses they'd have to make. So let's break this down real quick. D here is just the size of that attacker's password list, their dictionary. Let's say it has 100,000 common passwords. And B, that's our secret weapon, the number of bits in our random salt. We'll use a 32-bit salt in this case, which means, and get this, there are 2 to the power of 32, or about 4.3 times billion possible unique salts. So what happens when you multiply those two together?
You get that. Over 429 trillion possible combinations. That attack that would have taken just a few seconds before, it now requires a mind-boggling amount of time and computer power. It's just a brilliant example of how one simple idea, just adding the bit of randomness, can boost our security exponentially. It's a really beautiful defense, actually.
Okay, so we've bolted the front door shut, we're feeling pretty good, but what about the threats that don't even bother knocking? See, some of the most clever attacks out there, they don't care about your password at all. They target the very foundations of how our apps work, their memory. And folks, this is a whole different ballgame.
The best way to get your head around this is with a simple picture. Imagine a program has a container, like a glass, that's designed to hold a very specific amount of data. But an attacker, they don't care about the limit. They show up with a fire hose and just pour way too much water in. All that extra water has to spill out. And where it spills, well, that's where the real damage happens. This kind of attack is called a buffer overflow, or sometimes you'll hear the more dramatic name, stack smashing. And a lot of times, it's caused by programmers using older, unsafe functions, like one called stray copy, that just don't bother to check the size of the data they're being handed. So an attacker sends this perfectly crafted chunk of data that they know is too big, it spills out of the buffer, and it starts overwriting other critical parts of the program's memory. So let me walk you through exactly how this heist goes down. First, the vulnerable app calls one of those unsafe functions. Second, the attacker sends that oversized chunk of data, and the buffer overflows. Now here comes the absolutely critical, genius, and frankly terrifying part. The overflow overwrites something called the return address. Think of that as the program's GPS, telling it exactly where to go next. The attacker wipes out the legitimate address and writes in a new one, the address of their own malicious code. And finally, the program, totally tricked, just follows the new instructions, jumps to that new address, and runs the attacker's code. game over. They're in. I know, that sounds pretty scary, right? But just like with passwords, the defenders haven't been sitting still. They've developed an entire arsenal of tools to fight back against these memory exploits. And it's not about finding one single magic bullet. It's all about building layers of defense. So first off, programmers can just use cipher functions that actually check data sizes. That's a big one. But modern systems also have these incredible built-in protections. For instance, stack canaries are like invisible tripwires. They're these little random numbers placed right next to that critical return address. If an overflow happens and that number gets changed, the program knows it's under attack and just shuts down safely. Then you've got ASLR, which is wild. It basically shuffles where a program's parts are in memory every time it runs. It's like trying to hit a moving target in the dark. The attacker can't predict where to aim. And finally, there's the NX bit, which marks parts of memory as non-executable. So even if an attacker manages to sneak their code in, the computer just flat out refuses to run it. Now, real quick, it's worth clearing up something that confuses a lot of people. You'll probably hear about two different kinds of overflows: stack overflows and heap overflows. The basic concept is the same, overflowing that container, but their goals are very, very different. So the stack overflow we just covered, the stack smashing, that's a direct assault. The goal is to immediately hijack the program and take control by overwriting that return address. A heap overflow is usually a lot more subtle. It's not trying to take control right away. Instead, its goal is to corrupt important data that the application is using, which is stored in a different memory area called the heap. By messing with that data, an attacker can trick the program into doing strange things, which might open up another vulnerability down the line. It's a long con, basically. And all of this really gets to the heart of what digital defense is all about. It's this constant, never-ending struggle. The defenders build a taller wall, and the attackers figure out how to build a taller ladder. We invent a brilliant technique like salting, and they immediately start looking for any tiny flaw in how it's being used. It's this relentless game of cat and mouse, and it's what pushes technology forward on both sides of the fight. So the main thing to take away here is that security is never finished. It's not a destination you arrive at, it's a process that never stops. And that leaves us with a really fascinating question to think about. As our defenses get more and more complex, using AI and all this new hardware, what kind of clever, ingenious new attacks are being cooked up in the shadows right now? What does the future of this invisible war even look like? Makes you think, doesn't it? Thanks for watching.